And I really feel like the COVID era kind of kicked that up, like the digital transformation and all that. There's so many SaaS tools, there's so many like messaging apps, and data is just all over the place now, right? So we're looking at AI to automatically detect data. Whether or not you labeled it correctly, like a lot of people, they try to go around and put the labels on. You know, someone can forget that label. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with that, where AI can come in, see, oh, there's a whole bunch of social securities on this document. Are you sure you want to email it to this person and detect it real time, redact, and let it go through?
It is my pleasure to be joined here at RSAC conference by Devin Ertel, who is the Chief Information Security Officer at Menlo Security. Devin, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, before we dig into our topics today, it's a busy RSA.
Yeah.
Anything in particular you're looking forward to as you walk the show floor?
You know, I check out vendors, just, you know, like everyone else here doing that. I like hearing strategies. Usually you will find topics that are going to be, they're up and coming and what people are thinking about, and you have like a mind share here. And I'll be interested to see how many times people say agentic while I'm here.
Yes. It was funny, we were joking about how like we're sort of on the trailing edge of the hype cycle for AI, but now we've added the word agentic, so we're back up again.
I feel like I heard it like 2 months ago, and now I've heard it 1,000 times already.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, let's talk about enterprise security. I mean, for folks who are not familiar with the types of things you and your colleagues at Menlo do, can you give us just a brief overview?
Yeah, so Menlo started over 10 years ago in the remote browser isolation space, so securing the web.
Yeah.
So when users are going out and browsing stuff, if there's a compromised website or something's going on, we actually have our own cloud browser that actually everything executes there, and we re-render to make everything safe for the user. Since then, we have added, you know, many more features, and that you could almost say it's what we're calling now workspace security. But yeah, so they've been in the browser. There's a lot of browser experts that know way more about the browser than I do there, but it's kind of crazy to think about. Like 10 years ago, I don't think we thought, we were not using the browser as much as we do now. Like I'm literally in the browser, that's basically...
I mean, I think it's central to most people's computing experience, certainly on the desktop.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, before we had thick clients and, you know, all this stuff, but now, it's kind of crazy how that's changed so much.
So help me understand, for folks who aren't familiar with it, this kind of browser, how does it differ from the day-to-day browser that I'm using that comes with my computer?
Well, the beauty about Menlo is that no one would even know. You use your browser.
Okay.
And we add the protections, so your user wouldn't even know that all these protections, there might be some things like, hey, you're downloading malware, we stopped it.
Right.
So they might see things like that, but the day-to-day use, you wouldn't even know that it's even happening, which as a security practitioner, as myself, the beautiful solution your end user should never know, right? You do not want to be a hindrance. You want to be able to let the business run. So that's a good thing, right? So we integrate with Chrome. You can put us as a proxy and get those. We can put it, and you can put us in front of applications, and we're kind of transparent to the user.
This word I've heard of, I think, to pre-detonate things. So
So think sandbox, and you know, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Well, what are some of the obstacles that you find some of your customers are facing here when they're coming to you and saying, hey, we think this might be a good fit for us? What problems are they trying to solve?
So of all the feature sets, with the beginning one, I think everyone was trying to solve like users going and downloading malware, right? Like that's like a very common thing, and that's what the remote browser isolation. What's happening now is we kind of flip it on its head, and we put the isolation in front of applications. I like to call it like a WAF on steroids. So we protect the application itself, and then we protect end user. What if you have a contractor? Normally you would, 6-month contractor comes in, you give them a whole laptop, and then you got to go get the laptop back. Sending the laptop and getting the laptop is hard enough in itself. With this new solution, you basically can put all these controls in. Oh, you don't want to let them download anything? You can't download anything when you go to this app. Oh, you don't want to upload anything? You can't do that. You can watermark it to make sure they can't screenshot things. You can essentially lock in this application, and ensure that nothing reaches the endpoint, because you can't really trust that endpoint being that you don't have it. So.
And is this outside or inside of the browser?
All in the browser.
It's all in the browser?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So you can put all these protections in place without having to procure a whole laptop with EDR on it, with all these security controls. And it's zero trust, right? And you can manipulate. You can even manipulate the page. I don't want them to see the comment section of this. So it's very very tuning.
You can actually go into the pages they're visiting and restrict.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating.
And since it's in the cloud, they can't change it. If it was on the endpoint, the user can fiddle if they're technical enough.
And I suppose, for, like you mentioned, a contractor, if someone wants to be in like a BYOD position, the person doesn't have to, the security professional doesn't have to be in charge of the device.
Yes.
Because they have control of the browser.
Yes, and it can be a pain shipping a laptop and you're building it.
It's getting it back that I think is the part that, right?
It is getting it back. You're absolutely right.
Right. No, we really need it back. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's touch on the hot topic, which is AI, of course. Mm-hmm. How does that play into any of the things that you all are doing?
So that's what we're using. We have a couple of things that we're using, like computer vision AI. And that would be protecting like credential compromise. So a phishing email comes in, they mimic your Okta page or whatever, your Microsoft O365 page, steal your credentials.
Right.
This would detect that, basically using computer vision, knowing, hey, this is not a O365 website, but it has your logo, and it has this on there. This seems a little thing. It would just immediately, I think we call it 0-hour detection. Like it would immediately detect it, even if categorization, wasn't labeled bad yet. And a lot of times what the actors do is they just bring up a site for a little bit and then,
right.
Or put it up, let it be under the radar, get a good categorization, and then you can fish people onto it. That's one way. The other way, which we're really looking into it, is with data, and that's where workspace security comes into play. I always say, like, back in the day, I don't want to age myself here, but we had mainframes and databases.
Sure.
And we could put our arms around it all, right?
That's right. I want to hug my server.
Yes. And we did. And I think as a security industry, we did a great job with all the firewalls, with the detonation before things come in.
Yeah.
But now, and I really feel like the COVID era kind of kicked that up, like the digital transformation and all that. There's so many SaaS tools. There's so many messaging apps, and data is just all over the place now, right? So we're looking at AI to automatically detect data. Whether or not you labeled it correctly, like a lot of people, they try to go around and put the labels on. Someone can forget that label. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with that, where AI can come in, see, there's a whole bunch of social securities on this document. Are you sure you want to email it to this person? And detect it real time, redact, and let it go through.
Right. So, you have the opportunity to kind of save the users from themselves.
Absolutely.
The errors, the unintentional sharing of things.
And if they actually wanted a document back, they can. So that's what we're looking at now, and that's what we're calling workspace security. It's like the modern thing where the browser is, and also there's all these back-end API calls. Data is spread out a lot, and a lot of people do not know where it is. It's a hard thing to do. It's a challenge right now.
Yeah. Well, I think for a lot of people, ignorance is bliss. How do you sleep at night? I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I trust people like you to know what's going on behind the scenes.
So,
well, let's touch on zero trust, because that's an important part of the equation as well. What do you all have? What's your relationship with zero trust?
Yeah. So with a couple of our products, I always like to say with the browser one, when people are browsing the web in general, you're not even trusting the web, right? So, but this is a different take on zero trust, but I do like to say that. The other one, when I said it, we flipped it on the other side, is, so when you give that contractor that app, back in the day we used to have to use VPNs, right?
Right.
And you're essentially tunneling them into your corporate underbelly, I call it, because the controls get weaker as you go in usually on these big organizations. In fact, I used to be a pen tester for many years, and when I compromised something and I could go through a VPN, I was like, game is over now. Because
the assumption is there's enough protection with the VPN that if you've made it past the VPN,
now you got to tunnel into
trust you.
Yeah, we got to tunnel into the network, and then you just pivot on to other things.
Sure.
Where this, you're giving access to a single app. you're not going anywhere but that app. So, and then, like I said, you can put a ton of other protections around there to protect that app itself, so they can't go elsewhere. So that is like the zero trust. In my mind, I mean, I've been in organizations where we are always trying to like micro-segment everything. I know there's a lot of solutions for that, but that's really challenging of understanding where every server is talking to what and trying to zero trust it that way. This is almost taking an approach of zero trust at the door, where you can't even get in anywhere, and then you basically are just zero trusting that user to that app, provide the security controls, provide the visibility of what they're doing, provide the ability to quickly cut it off if needed. So that is our play, which we call SAA, Secure Application Access, essentially is what that is.
The folks who are experiencing success with this approach, right? The thing that you are saying, we think this is the way to go at it. What does that look like for them? What are the things they're enjoying by embracing this approach?
Well, one is like the use case I used earlier, being a contractor. That, or bring your own device, you brought that up. Like even your phones, you can do that. You can literally say, okay, so you're allowing people to have their own phone, but maybe you shouldn't access the code base, or maybe you shouldn't access the cloud infrastructure, but I will allow you to access, I don't know, the lunch menu.
Right, okay, sure.
So you have that ability. You can really get granular with this stuff. And so with bring your own device, and I can tell you the one thing that a lot of people I think is overlooked is the actual security it's putting on the application itself. As a former pen tester, attacking the app, you get access, and then you attack the app. If you get access to the host, the end user, then you attack the app. It's a WAF, a web application security firewall. It's really hard to manage. It's a lot of rules, a lot of false positives. This is a plug and play. Like they cannot see or do or alter any of the requests that come into the application. So doing the SQL injection is next to impossible because unless you somehow figure a way to do it in the form and individually, so you're really protecting the app. What also you're doing, so what attackers are doing now is, so everyone's going on the FIDO two-factor authentication because the attackers figured out how to push bomb on phones.
Right.
They figured out how to phish the one-time codes. So now what they're doing, as people are using FIDO, which is a much more secure two-factor, they're just taking the cookie. So think when you authenticate via FIDO, and it's like, okay, well, I'll take this cookie now, and then I'll go and access it. With this solution, the cookie actually never also touches the endpoint. So if that endpoint was compromised, they're not going to be able to get that authentication cookie and bring it somewhere else and then gain access. So you really are zero trusting that device where it can, you're locking it down quite a bit without having a whole bunch of agents and EDR and all that. You don't need all that stuff. I'm not saying you don't need EDR. I believe that's a foundational thing, but yes.
Well, but when you all are designing and deploying this product, how do you balance for your users ease of use with powerful options, right?
Absolutely. Well, internally, I say we're customer zero, and we literally, everything that we build, we put out in our company. So sometimes I have made users unhappy. So which then gives feedback, and we change things like that. So there are things you can do. So you could say you want Okta to be that factor, and then there's a cloud browser login that happens after the fact. You can loosen those controls because you have the door in front of that. That is the Okta and the FIDO and your password rotation and whatever you're doing authentication security-wise, access the cloud browser itself. So you can depending on your use case and if you're in a big government and very sensitive, you might not want to. It all depends on your company and its risk appetite on that one, of how you want to crank those levers.
Yeah. Where do you suppose this is all heading? We were talking about how the browser is central to most people's desktop computing experience. Is this the future? Is not having that soft underbelly on your machine available? Do you think that's where we're heading?
As a security professional, I would love everyone to have a Chromebook.
Yeah, right.
But it's a cultural shift that, in fact, I was just talking to another practitioner. there's a joke where it's like, to pay a bill, the old school, we have to open up the laptop, we don't bring out the phone. And I'm still that way, right? So
That's right, that's right.
So there's always a cultural shift. But do many people, besides an engineer that is like coding, that's going to take a bigger cultural shift?
Yeah.
But like a salesperson or a marketing person, I think a Chromebook will be fine. The amount of stuff you can do in a web browser, which they already do, if you see their laptops, it's just a Chrome page with 1,000 tabs open.
I'm with you. I'm sure our listeners have heard me talk about, when I was the time to outfit my elderly father with a computer, and he'd been a Mac user for many, many years, but there was a time when Chromebook, for my sake,
absolutely, it's like troubleshooting.
Yeah, it was just, it's kind of bulletproof. The simplicity fit the user case, in that particular case.
Yeah. I think that's where it's going, which the interesting thing is, Chrome, Safari, you name it, the browser.
Yeah.
They're not like a corporate application, right? And we haven't put the protections in place, and that's where Menlo has come in and said, okay, use your browser, let us put a little more security on it. And Chrome is doing stuff where they're continually adding, but you have a little more control over it, rather than just being because it's basically an operating system now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Devin, thank you so much for taking the time for us. It's a real pleasure to get to chat with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.